All right, and one more moment before we get started. If you're just getting logged in and getting set up, all you need for class today is some space to lie down, so a yoga mat, a towel, a blanket, and then just have a small pillow nearby as an extra prop, just in case if you need some support for your head or anything. Okay, so we are at 7 o'clock Eastern time. For me, I know we have people calling in from all different time zones. So welcome everybody to the Community Online Academy 5-Star Back Pain class. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Allie. I'm a doctor of physical therapy as well as a nationally certified Pilates instructor. I have been practicing here in the Boston for the last 5 years, and I've had the wonderful opportunity to teach with the Community Online Academy since its beginning, which is about 14 weeks ago now, so it's a little hard to believe. But today's program is going to be a 30-minute program on back pain. It's going to be mostly movement-based, so we'll be down on the mat moving, we'll get up off the mat a little bit, and then we will spend a moment at the end talking about ergonomics for your work from home setup, and then any questions that you have we can go over at the end of the program. I do ask that you guys try and stick around for the end of the program so that I can show you as well how to leave feedback. I read all your feedback and I take that very seriously and make adjustments every week about how we can improve this program. So one thing I like to highlight before we get started, and we're almost there, is that everybody's back is different and everybody's bodies are a little bit different, even from day to day. So I encourage you guys to listen to your bodies today. And if you need to take a modification or you want to take a challenge, please do so. But just do what feels right for your body. Not every exercise we do is going to feel great for everyone. If you need to modify, that's fine. And I want you guys to get the most out of this program and feel good by the end of class. So with that being said, we're going to start lying down on our backs. And if you want to have a pillow behind your head, you can grab one and do so now. You can choose to lie with your legs flat on the mat or with your knees bent. Sometimes having your legs totally extended can be a lot of pressure on your back, especially early on in the morning. So if you need to bend your knees, go ahead and do so, but just find a comfortable position to settle in. And I'll join you guys back on the mat here. I'm gonna stay seated for just a moment so I can cue you, but allow your body to just rest down on the mat. Feel the heaviness of your head, your shoulders, your mid-back and rib cage, and just rest comfortably as you get tuned into how your body feels today and in this moment. And as you lie here on the mat, start to notice any differences you might feel from side to side, any spots of tension, and know that there's no right or wrong for how your back feels right now, but we're just noticing it in preparation to start to move a little bit through this class. As you lie here, tune your attention into your breath. And you're going to hear me talk about breath a number of times throughout this class, but our breath is important in order to strengthen some of our deeper abdominal muscles, but also to relax some of the muscles around our back that might be tight or in spasm. So as you tune your attention into your breathing, see if you can send your breath down into your belly and into your rib cage. So I want you to imagine your trunk like a cylinder, and you're trying to expand that cylinder from all dimensions, forward, backwards, sideways. Big breaths in, and exhale, let those breaths go. Maybe letting go of a little bit more air than your last exhalation. Good, another big breath in, and exhale, let it go. Try one more breath just like that. And then if your legs are all the way extended on the mat, go ahead and bend both of your knees, planting your feet down flat. We're going to start with some very gentle pelvic motion to introduce the movement to our low back. So we're going to imagine the space underneath your low back. You're going to think of closing that space by doing a small pelvic tilt and then opening up that space. Closing that space and opening that space. Now, if you've been taking my class for a couple of weeks now, you've done this exercise with me. I want you to focus in on your breathing when you do this, to try and exhale when you close the space, inhale when you open the space. exhale to close, and inhale to open. Now this movement can be as big or as small as you feel comfortable with. Work within your back's range of motion, and if this is the first moving you've done all day, it might start feeling a little stiff, and that's totally fine. We're actually going to use this movement to come right into our first strengthening exercise of the day, which is an articulated bridge. So what that looks like is closing the space under the low back and starting to curl to lift one vertebrae at a time, and then softening, rolling back down one vertebrae at a time. So I like to imagine my spine like a string of pearls. I am picking up one pearl at a time, and then I'm placing that one pearl at a time back down onto the mat. Now, if you feel back pain when you lift up a little bit higher, make your range of motion smaller. Maybe you're only lifting your tailbone off the mat and you're leaving your rib cage down. So explore that, but I want this to feel comfortable for you, and I want you to feel the work in the back of your legs. You may also feel a little bit of a stretch in your lower back as you do this movement, which is a good thing. We get a nice stretch and articulation between each of our vertebrae. As we practice this, we also start to strengthen those muscles in the back of our legs, which do a lot of support for our back when we squat and when we bend over. We'll try two more just like this. Nice job there, guys. And one more time, and softly melt down. Good. Go ahead and walk your feet together and knees together. Allow your arms to rest just outside of your mat space, so maybe a 45-degree angle from your hips, and start to gently rock your legs side to side. So now we're going to introduce our first bit of rotation into our back. And again, this might be really small. I want you guys to only go as far as you can without any pain or discomfort in your lower back. So you're allowing the legs to only rock as far as you can go in a comfortable range. And hopefully as you move, that range of motion gets a little bit bigger. But this is the first rotation we've done of the day. So be gentle with your body. Try and keep your knees together and your feet together as you rotate. That's going to help the rotation stay in your back and not just go into your hips. And we will stretch our hips a little bit later in class today. Two more times here. Excellent. And last time. And then we'll settle with the legs right in the middle. So we're going to get into one of our first core exercises of the day. And one of the most important functions of our core is to keep our spine still during certain movements. So I want you guys to think about walking first. When we're walking, that's a movement of our legs. Our spine has tiny bits of rotation, but in general, our spine should not be moving tremendously when we're walking. So I want you guys to bring your hands on top of your trunk and your belly so you can kind of feel your rib cage and your hips at the same time. And I want you to then notice that underneath your hands, your spine is still. Now I want you to see if you can keep it still as you start to march your feet up off the mat. So we're kind of mimicking this alternating leg movement that you might see when you're walking. And you may find that lifting one leg is tremendously trickier than the other, that you feel a lot more movement when you lift one than the other. So slow down your movement, see if you can make it nice and controlled as you lift. If this is feeling really easy and you have no movement whatsoever, lift both legs up to a tabletop position, and then you're going to practice instead lowering one leg down. So you'll notice here that my knees are staying bent. I'm just dropping my thigh away from my belly and drawing it back in. And you may not be able to reach the floor. You may start to feel some movement in your spine, in which case you pull the leg back up. I want you guys to keep breathing here, certainly not holding your breath, but you can breathe in any pattern that feels comfortable for you. I recommend trying to exhale at the point that is the most challenging for your core. We'll try 3 more here. 2. Last time, place both feet down and take a rest. So we're going to come up to a seated position. You're welcome to just push yourself up, but if you would like to try a roll up, you're going to stretch your legs long, reach your arms long overhead, And try and roll yourself up to sitting. So that's another function of our abdominals, separate from holding our spine still, is to actually help us to sit up. So once we're in this seated position, we're going to do a little stretch for our hamstrings. But I want to preface this by saying, if you have sciatica, which is radiating pain into the legs that starts at your low back, you're going to add a soft bend to your knees. If you do not have sciatica and you feel like your hamstrings are really, really tight, you can also have a soft bend in your knees. But if you're able to sit up nice and tall with your legs straight, go ahead and do so now. So I think traditionally, most people, when they think of hamstring stretches, they see this big rounding forward and the spine reaching towards the toes. That can sometimes create a lot of compression for your back. So I want you guys to just rest your hands down on the floor, sit up as tall as you've ever sat up, and you might already feel a stretch in the back of your legs. If you don't, I want you to just walk your fingertips forward, but try and keep your back mostly flat. So it's like a hinging from your hips forward until you feel that stretch in the back of your legs. And once you do, you just hold it. You don't have to reach all the way forward to your toes to feel that length in the back of your legs. And you can still feel that stretch even with your knees softly bent. You may just need to walk forward a little bit more. And the reason we do that knee bend for sciatica is because the sciatic nerve runs along the back of your leg. So we take a little pressure off the nerve, but we still get a stretch on the hamstring. We'll hold this for one more breath here. Good. And then we're going to flip on over to an all fours position. So we will set up with the hands directly underneath the shoulders and the knees directly underneath the hips. I'm just going to come on. I think we're getting a little bit of background noise there. All right. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so once we're set up, hands underneath the shoulders, knees underneath the hips. If you have knee sensitivity, this is another place where you can add the pillow under your knees. If you have wrist sensitivity, you can lower onto your forearms. We're going to start by just doing a cat-cow. So I like to think rounding the spine, letting my head drop down, and then arching my back, allowing the head to lift. And this is within your spine's comfortable range of motion. It is often easy to create this movement from the low back. I challenge you guys today to think of making that nice smooth curve from your upper back as well. And so often one of the places we are the stiffest is our upper back, and that can contribute to extra stress that we feel in our lower back. So we'll get to a little bit of that stretching later in class today as well. 2 more times like this. Excellent. Good, guys. And last time. And then settle somewhere in the middle. So our neutral spine position should look like a flat upper back with a very gentle small curve in the low back. Once you are there, I'm going to have you lift your right hand and reach it straight out to the side with your palm facing down. So I'm going to turn just for a moment so you guys can see. I am just reaching my palm down. Nothing fancy. We're just holding it here like this. And this is a work to try and build up some core strength. Again, that stability to be able to keep our spine still when our arm is doing a movement. So this time, this might be how strong is your core when you're reaching for something like a plate up high on a shelf or pulling something that's a little bit heavy off to the side. We hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Bring your hand down for just a moment. We're going to take that right into a stretch for our upper back. So still right hand is lifted. We're going to follow that hand with our eyes up to the ceiling and then thread our right hand underneath our left arm, resting your head down on the mat. From here, we open up, reach that right hand back up to the ceiling, and then thread the right hand underneath our left, bending our elbow, letting our head and shoulders rest down. Like I said, this is a stretch for your upper back. And so you can make it as big or as small as you would like, but if you have shoulder sensitivity, you can keep your elbow bent and still do the same stretch with the bent elbow. 2 more like this on this side. Nice work there, guys. And one more time. And we'll hold it at the bottom. Try taking 1 deep breath here. Exhaling and coming back through the center. So for a moment, we're going to reset, drawing our neutral spine by lifting through the top of the head, relaxing our shoulders, and drawing the fronts of our rib cage up away from the floor. We're going to now reach the left hand straight out to the side. And I challenge you, can you reach a little bit farther to the left? Almost like you might tap whatever is to the left side of you. So I might tap these plants waiting over here. And we hold and breathe. Try unlocking your right elbow, growing long through the top of your head for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Bring your hand down, take a quick rest. I always find that one surprising how tricky it can be. And we'll go right into that upper back stretch. So this time following our left hand up to the ceiling, thread it underneath our right shoulder, let your head and neck rest down. And then we open up that left hand up to the ceiling and thread it all the way underneath, head and neck rest down. We'll do about 4 more here. And because we are stretching the upper back, you want your breath to be as big as you can. Our rib cage attaches to our thoracic spine, our upper back. And so if you can create big, expansive breath, you actually get a deeper stretch in this range of motion. We're going to hold it down on this next one for 1 big breath. Trying to expand the ribs out to the side. And then we'll come back through the center, this time lowering down onto our stomach. Now, if when you lie down on your stomach, you have sensitivity in your low back, you're going to put a pillow underneath your hips. And that will just help you to take away some of the stretch that our spine feels by being flat. So we'll set up with the hands underneath the shoulders, separate your feet a little bit wider than hips distance, and we're going to start to press up to arch the back. And so maybe you can only lift comfortably here to your forearms and your upper back. You may be comfortable lifting all the way up into a full spine extension. So work within your body's comfortable range, as always, and know that this is the opposite position of how our spine spends most of its day when we're sitting. So if you're someone who has to do a lot of sitting for work, and I think all of us are sitting more than we ever have right now, do know that this may be a little bit tight, but this is also a great stretch for you to reverse the effects of the sitting. So nice and gentle. If you feel pinching and soreness in your low back, make this a little bit smaller, but also think of making some of that stretch come from your upper back. Sometimes we put too much of the pressure by just hinging into the low back. So make that spine extension and curve nice and symmetrical from the upper back all the way down to your low back. We'll try 2 more here. Excellent. And one more time, just relax your shoulders away from the ears. Enjoy that stretch for a moment. And then settle all the way down onto the mat. You can go ahead now and make a little pillow with your hands and turn your head to one side. We're going to do a little bit of hip stretching here by bending both of our knees, and our feet are still, or rather our knees are a little bit wider than our hips. Once your knees are bent, you're going to windshield wiper them side to side. So you may recognize this movement when we did rotation for our lower back earlier in class. Having this separation of the knees now helps this rotation to stretch our hips. And so you may feel that one side you can go much farther than the other, and that's normal, especially if you're somebody who tends to cross one leg over the other, much more than the opposite of crossing the other leg. So you may feel that that hip is a bit more flexible. So just nice and easy. This can sometimes create a little bit of cracking or popping in your back as well. That's normal as long as it's not painful. Just be gentle with your spine, and that's okay if you're hearing that at this point. We'll do 3 more. And 2. And last time. Good. Straighten out your legs and now walk your feet together. So as close together as you can. You're going to keep your left hand down on the mat and now bend your right knee and reach back for your right toes. If you cannot reach your toes, you can press yourself up just slightly. But if that feels like a lot of pressure in your back, you can also do this stretch in standing. So I will show that in a moment, but what we're going to do is just pull the foot in close towards your bottom so you can feel a stretch across the front of your thigh and maybe even the front of your hip. Now, if you feel this in your low back, I want you to try and engage your abdominals. Sometimes we feel stress in our back when we do this stretch because the hip flexor muscle actually attaches to our back. And so if we can find some support from our core, it should make that a little bit more comfortable. Now, pause there. If you're doing this in standing, you may want to have something to just hold onto and come up to a tall standing position. And that's an option here as well. So we'll take one more breath here. And then we'll go ahead and switch over. You can plant your left forearm down, reach your left arm back, grab onto your toe, and find a gentle stretch. Again, you can come up to standing as well. And I like to focus on the quad and the hip flexor as well because they also get shortened when we sit. So for a lot of us, we tend to be a little extra tight through the front side of our hip and our quad. We'll take one more deep breath here. And then very gently pressing ourselves up to a seated position. So I'm going to sit now down on my left hip with my legs off to the right side of my body. If this is uncomfortable for your hips or you feel like you're not flexible enough to sit this way, sit on your pillow. So you're going to lift your hips up and just sit down on your pillow. If it's still uncomfortable, you can just sit with your legs in a diamond shape or any way that's comfortable. But for now, we're going to try sitting down on the left side of our hip with our legs off to the right. So far, we have moved our spine forward, we've moved our spine backwards, and we've done rotation in our spine, so twisting. The last spinal movement we're going to explore is side bending, so moving in a pure sideways plane. So what we'll start with is opening up our arms into our widest wingspan you've ever had, sitting up really, really nice and tall, and then just gently diving our arms up and over, feeling a nice stretch through our side body. And you may notice as you're sitting here that you start to slump again. Try and pick yourself up nice and tall so that you're only bending sideways. I like to imagine maybe that I'm a really tall windmill or a wind turbine. Good. And again, you might feel one side tighter than the other. That's okay. Just be gentle with your spine here. Now, if you've been taking my classes a little bit and you've done this one before and you want to build on some strengthening, what you can do the next time your left hand comes down is stretch your legs out and lift your hips into a side plank or a side bend, and then lower down. And again, left hand comes down, you lift the hips up, find that big side bending, and lower down. You are also welcome to just stay in this nice, easy sideways motion here. So whatever is comfortable for you guys. We'll do 2 more. Good. And one more time here. Excellent. Good. Okay. So if you want to do a fancy transition over to the other side, reach your hands back behind you. You're going to lean back, kick your legs up and over. So now you are sitting on your right hip with your legs splayed off to the left. Again, this side might be different, so maybe you need to grab your pillow here to sit up on your pillow or change your leg orientation. Try sitting up as tall as you can, opening up that wingspan, take up space, and then start to dive up and over. Good. So there's a reason we try and explore spine range of motion in all directions. We know that a mobile spine, so a spine that's able to move well in all planes of motion, is one that is less likely to experience an injury or to feel stiffness. So we like to kind of gently move our spine in all its available ranges. If you guys would like to build on this one, next time you plant your right hand down, stretch your legs out long, reach up and over, and gently lower your hips back down. So I always kind of imagine when I add this big movement in that I am a mermaid lifting my spine up and over and then gently sitting back down. We'll try 2 more here. And maybe you're just staying in that nice, easy windmill, wind turbine motion. And 1 more, reaching up and over and take a comfortable seat. Excellent work, guys. So that is our movement part of class. What I want to talk about today regarding ergonomics is how to set up your seated work from home setup. And I've talked about this a couple times before, but it's been a while, so I thought we might come back and review those same principles. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my chair here. And really, this is not a chair, but I'm using this as an example for you guys. This is a little poof. I'm just going to adjust my camera so you can see to go over some of the principles of what to look for when you're sitting. So let's imagine this is my seated desk setup. What I'm looking for is 90-degree angles. And so that's a nice right angle. And that should be at my ankles, my knees, and my hips. And so in this seated position right now, my ankles are good. My feet are on the floor. If you have a hard time reaching the floor, probably you're not quite at a right angle. So your feet should be flat on the floor. Now for me, this chair is a little bit too low. So I have more than a 90-degree bend here. So I would need to prop myself up a little bit higher. And same goes for the back. I'm not really getting a lot of support from this chair here. And that's mostly because it's too low. But I would want to be seated up so that my spine, as best it can, follows its natural curve. So if you can imagine what your back looks like when you're standing, you want something relatively close to that when you're sitting. And the amount of curve in your low back is probably different than mine and different than your neighbors. So everyone's seated position will look a little bit different. And that's why not one chair is perfect for everyone. But generally speaking, you need a little bit of lift from your pelvis to maintain that small curve. Now, what I recommend for most people is that this gets tiring over the course of the day. Unless you've got tremendous core strength, it's hard to focus and maintain this support all day long. And so putting a small pillow or a towel rolled up really low along the base of your sacrum will help to kind of remind you when your body starts to slump and sit back that you are maybe not maintaining that nice lumbar curve that supports your spine. Now, we could get into much more detailed ergonomics about where your computer should be and everything, but the one that I want to highlight is that the recommended distance from your eyesight to your computer screen is 19 inches, which is not really that far. Almost always when I analyze somebody's work setup, they're too far away from the screen. And so what that means is that you might have this perfect chair set up, but then over the course of the day to see the screen, you're getting closer and closer. So you can always have somebody maybe take a measurement for you so that when you're sitting in your true comfortable work setup, measure from your eyes to your computer screen. It should be no more than 19 inches. So with that being said, I want to take a couple minutes just to answer some of your questions. And because we have this nice small group for the 5-star class, you guys are welcome to unmute yourself. You should have the ability to do so, or write your questions into the chat. And I'll just quickly say what I hope you take from the movement-based part of our program today is that there are many, many stretches, of course, you can do for your back, but the most important thing is that we keep our backs moving. So you don't need to do this whole program in its 30-minute entirety all at once. You can mix in little bits and pieces of these stretches throughout your day. And the best thing you could do is probably every 2 hours or so, especially if it's a day when you're sitting all day, try and get some regular movement in. And even if it's just a minute or two of movement, it helps to keep your spine warm, flexible, and mobile. So I just had the question, do you recommend frequent breaks? Yes, I do. I think that if you have to sit for a long period of time, no matter how perfect your seated setup is, it's not, your spine is not gonna like sitting still all day long. And so ideally, I think you get up every hour, at a minimum every 2 hours. And one of my favorite ways to get people to move a little bit is to hydrate. So drink a lot of water. It's good for your body to drink a lot of water, but it's also good because you're gonna have to get up and use the bathroom. And it doesn't take a long time to do that, but even that little bit of movement, maybe 1 or 2 minutes that you get up to use the bathroom, that's good for your spine. It's a change in position. It's a little bit of movement getting you out of that static seated setup. So I have a question here. How many pillows do you recommend we sleep with? That's a tricky question in the sense that it depends on what position you're sleeping in. And it's a little bit dependent on what type of back condition you might have. But generally speaking, what I recommend for sleeping on your back is that when you have your pillow, instead of having it just under your head, slide it down just a little bit so it's on your upper back and your head. So it's a very subtle adjustment, but what that does is instead of pushing your head forward, it's gonna push your whole spine forward as one unit. And then if you feel pressure in your back when your legs are flat on the mat, I recommend that you put a pillow, a small pillow, underneath your knees. So that can take off some of the pressure that your back feels if you're someone who, when you lay totally flat, that your back is uncomfortable. So I hope that answers your question. If not, go ahead and write to me in the chat. Awesome. Any other questions that you guys have about back pain or about this class? Okay. So I know we're right at our time here. So if you guys do have more questions,